Okay, welcome to the FP&Ai Podcast, where we discuss financial planning and analysis for the Office of the CFO and everything related to that. In this series, we're doing the 10 tips to budgeting, forecasting, and planning. And we're coming up with the 10 tips. Last week, we spoke about driver-based budgeting, and we're going to continue that conversation. We just scratched the tip of the iceberg last week. And I'm Roger Knocker, and I'm the host of this, and I've got my co-founder of FP&Ai, Anthony Wilson, with me today. Welcome to the show, Ant, and you're the resident expert in this field, and we're going to learn from you today. Last week, you told us about driver-based planning and budgeting, showed us a couple of examples how we do driver-based planning in revenue, as well as in employee planning, workforce planning. You can call it a couple of things. But essentially, that's to try and get your employee-related costs, which is often 30-40% of a business's costs, depending on the business. So it's a very important aspect. Of course, revenue planning is essential to every business. Every business does it to a greater or lesser extent. I've got one client that, they have to go down to the trading days, and whether the trading days in a month is 22.12 or 20.2, fine margins. It's so fine, and it makes a huge difference to their business and their performance. And they go to a lot of effort to get that right, and justifiably so. And that's how they stay profitable and grow the business. So there's all levels of driver-based planning. We did revenue and we did employees. What are we going to do this week? Let's go into some tools and look at some more examples so that we can be quite practical. And then when we come back, we can look at how do we get these kind of systems and processes implemented.
Okay, great. So thank you, Raj. It's good to be back. So I'm going to share my screen and just show a few more examples of driver-based budgeting and how they can be used in different business industries. So I'm back in Profix, and I'm going to start by looking at a subscription-based business. So in the example that I've got here, we are looking at the number of additional contracts or subscription contracts that will be sold, as well as the number of cancellations. So that is going to drive what my actual revenue is going to look like going forward. And those numbers that we would have in here would be informed, yes, by history, but also by what we're expecting to happen in the market. And again, just to reiterate what we were saying last week, it's the key here is using the number of subscriptions that are being sold to drive that revenue number, so that it's a lever that we can play with to move closer to our targets as we're going through that. So within a subscription-based business, those are two key drivers: new contracts, cancellations of contracts, and often you've got new cohorts, if you like, coming in. So a cohort, for example, is a group of individuals that you're targeting with a specific contract or a subscription, and that's tailor-made to them. So you've got lots of new subscriptions coming in potentially in a year. It will allow you to also then say, right, this is similar to what I'm already doing in another subscription, but I can adjust the price and I can see when those volumes are planned to come in, and I can start building that up as well within my budget. So in this sort of example, we can forecast or budget the additions and cancellations. That'll tell me how many existing customers I'm retaining and how many new total customers I have, and that'll help me understand my churn percentage. All right, so an important ratio when you're looking at a subscription-based business is to understand what your churn percentage is, and you would have targets that you're aiming at within that churn percentage. So already by just putting those two values in the system in a fairly simple way is telling me what that churn percentage is going to be, or what I'm planning for that to be into the future. So that's the first important outcome, or if you like, financial driver that we are looking at when we look at the outcome over here. And we can then go do that by our different cohorts within that base. What we then want to do is say, all right, great. We know what our customer base is looking like. How does that convert into revenue for my business? So if I jump across to this sort of to my next template, what we can then do is say, right, we understand the number of new customers that we're acquiring. We've now modeled that in our previous screen. I know what my cost per contract is when I'm setting the contract in. And from there, I can calculate what my monthly revenue on that contract is going to be. So that's revenue that I recognize. Although the contracts might be paid up front, you only recognize that revenue over the life of that contract month by month. So what this is doing is telling us then, okay, based on my new customers acquired, what is my contract value going to be for the life of that contract? And you can see over here, we can see which months within our budget period those contracts are coming in. So it also calculates for us, when those contracts are coming to an end within the lifetime of the contracts, which ultimately shows me what my annual contract value is going to be per month. Now, the benefit again of this is we're in an environment where we can change the drivers. So if I go and do a scenario around a certain cohort or increase or decrease my additions, it'll flow through to here and recalculate that based on the price. Or I can play with my price to understand how price movements might affect the budget. Maybe I bring my price down and I sell more. How does that affect it? So it allows you to then have those sort of levers in that sort of budget. So just an illustration of a slightly different revenue model, subscription versus selling a normal sales business, but how we can use drivers to bring that all together and give us the ability to pull those levers and see what the result is on our budget at the end of the day.
It's interesting how a subscription business, it's just these days it's standard to factor in churn rate. I remember old manufacturing businesses or retail business, not retail, but more industrial businesses, churn rate wasn't ever factored into budgets. But if you think of it, it should have been. Should always have been there. These guys, the subscription model has just, I suppose, highlighted it and made it such an important factor.
Yeah.
But it's always been there and it's relevant for every business. Is to try and protect that churn.
Correct. You've got to protect your business. You've got to protect that revenue that's coming in. It's like they say, I mean, it's finding a new customer is so much harder than the customers that you have. And that churn factor is so important. You can keep that down and retain the customers that you have. It just makes growing your business so much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's good. That was interesting. What else have you got on driver-based examples?
Yeah, so one thing that I can also show is, one of the benefits of driver-based planning that we mentioned previously is you can then go and change certain factors and levers within the business to understand what the effect would be. So here I've got a scenario analysis, revenue scenario analysis sheet. And basically, I've got 4 drivers over here: revenue, direct labor, direct material, and then manufacturing overhead. And what I can do, because I've got my business is driven by those those drivers, I can play with my different scenarios and see what the result would be. So, for example, you can see I've got a comparison of budget to scenario 1 and to scenario B. And if I go down, I can analyze that right down to a gross margin percentage in this case. So the fact that it's all linked up by these drivers allows me to do something like this. So if I want to say, well, in scenario A, I'm going to push my product revenue up by 5%. And I can also then say, right, well, my direct labor is probably going to go up by 3. My materials will be as efficient as we can. So maybe it's only by 4%. And on my manufacturing overhead, well, let's be honest, it's going to go up by 6%. I can do that and recalculate. So by refreshing, I just recalculate the model, and it will now show me what is going to change. So you can see my product revenue's gone up, my costs have gone up, and I can go right down to the bottom to understand, with those moves, I've moved my gross margin percentage by 0.1%. I might want to have a plan B, which is a little bit more aggressive. So let's go for 30% growth on that. I'm getting efficient on my labor, my materials, also try to keep to a minimum. And hey, we can probably get some benefit out of our overhead as well, manufacturing overhead. And if I refresh that, I can then look at scenario B. So again, it creates the variances for us. And I can see by doing that, I can overall create a 2.5% increase in my gross margin. What it also would allow me to then do is say, all right, great, but 2.5% is not really the move I'm looking for. What else in my business can I do to increase that gross margin percentage? And this is where you start now going down to some of those detailed drivers you've got, but you might want to say, I can only look at 30% increase, but I've actually got to try to keep my staff to a 10% increase. My direct materials, I'm buying more volume. I should be able to get a price. Maybe I can keep that at 15, for example. And you can play with those scenarios to see what that impact would be and, what you can do. Okay, I'm getting 4.5. So, maybe I'm aiming at 5%. I'm getting much closer to that now. And once I've done that and I can understand what I've moved, you can then go into, as I say, more detailed drivers, but you've also then got a plan as to how you're going to achieve that increase in your gross margin percentage.
Driver-based planning and scenario analysis go hand in hand. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish between the two, but the one enables the other.
Yeah.
And I think we must come back and do a whole episode on different scenarios and how you can do what if in scenario analysis.
You've got to
but
keep in mind
they are linked. They are definitely
absolutely
interrelated.
Linked.
And maybe you can just position that. Maybe just position that for us.
Yeah, I mean, one of the main reasons you want to do driver-based budgeting is related to your scenario planning. If you're doing it just to get your yearly budget in place, yes, there's value, but it's very static and it's not going to move. Now, in today's world, business changes daily. It's not that you can do your budget and for 12 months, that's what your plan is. So the driver-based budgeting allows you very quickly to change that budget or forecast or scenario based on what is happening in the market. So you might be 3 months into your new year and you realize the market's very different to what I anticipated. I can very quickly replan the rest of the year by changing those drivers, and in link to that into scenario planning to be able to say, well, we feel there's an opportunity in a market that we didn't think of before. For example, I've got my base plan. If I'm able to sell 20% more into that market, what does it do to my budget? And I can move that around. So it allows you to quickly do that because you can simply say, take one of my drivers and increase it by a percentage, or just increase my yearly total or increase a month. And that one driver that might be affected by whatever market condition or marketing strategy you have will ripple its way through your budget or your scenario, and you'll be able to see what impact it's having on that. So it gives you, so I'm talking about two things there. It's being able to scenario plan. What if I do something? What would the effect be? But also to replan regularly to say things are changing always. I need to readjust my plan quickly so that I'm aligning to what the reality is at the moment.
Great. I see you've got cash flow planning, cash events.
Yeah. Also, just
have you got?
Yeah.
Okay. Show us what this one's about.
Yeah. So this is just a slightly, again, it is driver based, but it's maybe going down to a little more detail in some ways. But it's, if you're looking at your cash within the business and who's not, it's important to understand what's driving the cash that you're going to end up with. It's going to end up in your bank accounts at the end of the day. So through cash event or cash planning, we can look at the events that are happening currently in our business and events that we're expecting to happen in our business to tell us what our cash position is more than likely to look like at a point in time. So in this example, you'll have invoices coming through your business that I'm invoicing this month. I know I'm only going to recognize or have that revenue come in 2, maybe 3 months' time. So by going down and analyzing or populating the information by invoice, you can then say per invoice, when am I expecting it to be paid? You can also have the ability to adjust that. So maybe the customer's phoned and asked for an extension. You can put that in. You can say what penalties might be charged if they're going to be late, etc., interest rates that are going to be charged. And basically what this will do is it'll take, again, these drivers and it'll start mapping out when to expect the actual money to be coming into your bank account so that you plan your cash properly. Now, linked to that, and this is again where your driver-based planning in a budget scenario also becomes important. If you're budgeting at a granular level, you should also, or should I say, either at a customer level or at a customer grouping level, you can then know I'm budgeting to sell a certain amount to X customer in my budget. I know the terms of my customer. I can use that to drive, even within my budget numbers, what my cash is going to be expected to be. So not just looking at where I am in an actual position, but also saying, based on my budget, what am I expecting that cash flow to look like? And that's just in one example. You can, if you think about your receivables and payables, the same principle applies. You can apply those assumptions, and you can use assumptions that exist in your current general ledger to understand that. But the system is going to start driving those numbers for you, as opposed to someone trying to put that all together.
Suppose in cash flow planning, the effort is getting these operational numbers out of your operational systems.
Yeah.
And when you really need cash and things are tight, you want to be looking at a 2-weekly plan, right? It doesn't help to have a high level 6-month, 12-month forecast. And again, this is synonymous with driver-based and cash flow planning go hand in hand, because this can automate that cash flow plan for you and get you to the answer quickly with lots of automation, which otherwise you wouldn't have available to you if you were doing it manually.
And the benefit here as well, sorry, Raj, the benefit of also doing this in a system as opposed to having a person in the business sitting with an Excel file collating all this information. If you're a fairly big business, you can have this at a divisional level where individuals are managing just the invoices and so on that are coming through. They're part of the business, and you can bring that all together in the system, collaborate, aggregate that information to get a total picture of where you are within the business. We did a similar model to this for a big multinational a number of years ago. And they were able to use the system to understand not just what their cash position was, but what the cash position was in each region, and what their treasury needed to do with that based on that. So what money needed to move around the business. So that's hugely insightful when you're running a business that is a multinational and you need to do lots of that transfer of money between the businesses. And you bring currency into that. And we were able to model all of that into this cash planning.
Any more examples, then? Or is that
that's all I've got. All I've got for today. Yeah.
Okay. Just go back into discussing how to identify the right drivers for a business. If you're going to do driver-based planning, how do you go about identifying those right drivers? Are there any frameworks? Are there any methodologies? Is this old hat? Is it something that people battle with? What is your experience there?
Okay. Yeah, I think people do battle with it. If you're wanting to understand how to do your driver-based budget, at the end of the day, it comes down to data and understanding your business and the data within your business. So you need to be able to analyze your historical information, to be able to pick up trends in that information, cause and effect in that information. And you probably do need analysts that can make sense of that information and potentially products that can help you find trends in those products. The key thing is you want to find those consistent trends, which trends that correlate through the income statement, if you like. So when something happens, you can correlate that to something else happening. When I sell more, my costs go up. That's a given. When I sell more, suddenly I need more sales reps. That's maybe not so obvious. When I sell more, my coffee bill goes up. Might be something that you're not seeing, So there could be things that are happening that your data is going to tell you historically. And that will inform you of the connections, if you like, on your data. Linked to that is then also understanding and analyzing the cause and effect of those relationships. So use the data to identify the cause and effect, and then analyze them and make sure that you've got an understanding of them. So, for example, you might say, okay, sales volume affects revenue, affects profitability. Okay, pretty obvious, but that's the cause and effect. If I sell more, I'm going to be more profitable. If I sell more, I'm going to get better pricing on my materials for production because I'm buying in bulk, buying more. So there's a cause and effect. And it's finding those through the business, not just within the sales section and the expense section, but just trying to, what moves when certain things move in the business. Once you understand that and you understand what the cause and effect is, then you can start modeling it. So you can start going and say, all right, well, I know that if my sales volume moves, it's going to affect these things. Historically, how has it affected them? Have they correlated, or is it a percentage correlation? Is it how do I drive that correlation then? If my value goes up by 100 Rand, does it mean that my material costs will go up by the same percentage as what I've done in my revenue, or does it reduce the more it goes up or down, what have you? You want to understand all of those sort of things. In terms of tools, a tool that can help you understand those cause and effects is something like the balance scorecard. So you could look at a balance scorecard because that'll help you understand how everything from your processes right up to your actual final result affects each other and how it rolls up there. And from there, you can start identifying the key drivers and the key ratios that you're wanting to look at. Remember, again, you're wanting to look at the financial and the operational. What are my financial drivers, my GP percentage, MP percentage, etc., and what are the operational drivers, volume, machine hours, or what have you, that drive the actual budget to be able to get to that sort of point. So bottom line is, if you're wanting to do it right, you do need to be able to analyze your business and the information in your business. One thing that I would say, though, is, you've got to start somewhere. So you don't necessarily need to have a detailed understanding of all the cause and effect in your entire business to start. You might start with a section of your business and then grow from there in terms of those links and cause and effect within the business. So a simple start is to do your down to GP percentage using the drivers. Get that right, and then start understanding how those drivers affect your OpEx, etc., etc.
I think the principle here is that you need to collect historical data, and at the level that you can never plan something if you don't have the historical data. You won't be able to. If I need to model something and I don't have the historical data to verify it, I'm not going to be able to model it. I'm going to have to do something else.
Correct.
I'm going to have to jump to a higher level, which is, and not all historical data, not all business intelligence, not all analytics is useful for modeling. You might find it's an 80-20 again, is only, and you don't want to use it all. You don't want to take every metric you've got in your business and stick it into your forecast and now have to basically get data out of people's heads to populate all those variables. You want to collect the key data, but like I said, you can't model if you don't have the historical data. So that's another principle we're going to have to come back to next time after this tip is over. We're going to have to look at collecting history and how important is history in planning, and what do we need to do to make sure we've got a single version of the truth, that it's relevant, it's timeless, it's actually driving the financial numbers. Because you might be collecting what you think is great data, but it actually doesn't drive
Does
the
it?
financial forecast.
And I think that's the key thing is whatever you're looking at through the data, the cause and effect, the key word is the drivers. You're looking for the items that drive the business. There might be a lot of cause and effect in the business that actually is not material to your net profit at the end of the day. What drives that net profit is what you want to aim at. And you actually want to have as few drivers as possible. Because the fewer drivers that you've got, the easier it is to model. Obviously, they need to drive the business, but you want to try keep it to a minimum as much as possible. Otherwise, you get into that position again where it's too complicated, and you get to the end of the budget and you go like, I'm just going to stick a number in anyway. That's not really where you want to be. So you've got to work hard to understand what are the key drivers and try stick to a model around those key drivers.
Good. So how should FP&A teams work with business stakeholders to ensure that the driver-based planning reflects real-world operations? What is that interaction, and who do they work with, and how do they go about that?
Yeah, that's always a challenge because, it's easy to have someone in the FP&A team in finance sit and come up with an amazing model that does fantastic driver-based planning and completely misunderstand what actually happens in the business. So what's important, I think, first of all, is to make sure that you're holding cross-functional workshops. So as you're looking at understanding the drivers of your business, you need to make sure as a team, as an FP&A team, that you are talking to the different functions in the business, and even the different functions are talking to each other in this context. Because again, imagine if you're finding those cause and effects, you need to understand them, and having those conversations and workshops, showing them the results of the information analytics that you've done, but also understanding on the floor how that works is important. If you're wanting to build a model, a driver-based model that is representative of how the business works. A key thing then as well. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so if I can come in there, you as the FP&A professional are there to look at profitability and efficiencies. Those other cross-functional people might be looking at quality and customer service and compliance, and they're not necessarily wearing the hat that you can wear as an FP&A professional. They're wearing a different hat, and we need those people to be looking at those things as well in our businesses. But the FP&A person is critical to come in with that efficiency mindset, with the cost and revenue and profit, cash flow. That is what I see is vital in that role. And don't be shy of that role. If you're an FP&A professional, don't be shy. Go in there. You might feel like you're always talking about cost and margin, but that voice needs to be heard the whole time. Otherwise, the business will steer off and it will focus on something that's valuable. But at the end of the day, your efficiencies are going to suffer.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a great point, Raj. And I think that's critical that we help the rest of the business understand why we have certain targets that we're aiming at and ratios that we're aiming at and financial numbers that we're looking at. As you say, I'm with you 100%. Those operational type people, they're just worried about getting the operations running. They need to finish that job that needs to go through the machine today. That's their target. They're not looking at the cost of it, the profit of it. We've got to help them see that picture, but also we need to link the dots between when I run that machine, how that all comes together. So, that's very important.
So what tools did you want to say something more about?
I just wanted to say, so obviously an important point, as I say, is having cross-functional workshops and discussions. What's also important is, before you dive into your driver-based budget and come up with numbers that you're going to be measured on, is as you're building up that model and planning for it, is to do scenario planning to validate the results that are coming through, which is important because you need to, within the FP&A team, when you start using these models, you need to have confidence that it actually represents what is happening in the business. So scenario planning to validate it is key. You want to run scenarios where, for example, you could say, well, let me reforecast in my driver-based budget the last 6 months of actual business and see how close the result is to what my actual business was. That's an example of how you can do that sort of validation, which will potentially show you issues with your model, but also might show some nuances in the business that you didn't see before. But it helps you validate that you're actually building it in the right direction, and you tweak it and you change it and you retest it. So that is important. Again, you don't want to go into your first budget cycle forecast without having a good, solid confidence in the modeling that you're building.
Great. So what tools or technologies would you recommend implementing and maintaining your driver-based budgeting?
Yeah. So let me start with the implementing side. And we've spoken a lot about data, cause and effect. So in today's world, you have to have a good business intelligence tool that you're going to use to help you with that. You need a tool that's going to help you gather all that information, put it into a system that is easy to analyze, drill down into, and make sense of that information. Businesses these days, we generate so much data. You need those sort of tools to help you make sense of all of that information. You can also use AI or machine learning tools to help with that information, to find connections in the data for you using trusted algorithms, etc. Especially when you're working in a complex business, those sort of tools can assist you in that. And I think they're getting stronger and stronger and better at what they do. And then, of course, to be able to implement, run, and get the best out of your driver-based budget, you would look at also investing in an FP&A tool or FP&A software. And the decision around software would depend very much on who you are as a business and what you're trying to do and what sort of functionality you need and how big you are. But there are a number of tools out there that you can use. We use Profix and implement Profix in our customers. Fantastic tool that we believe in, but there are many other tools that you can use out there. Anaplan, Adaptive Insights, Workday, many more that you could potentially look at using if you wanted to. So those are kind of, from a technology point of view, are three key bits of technology I think that will support that driver-based budget. Business intelligence, allowing you to understand, interrogate, get a hold on that data. Potentially some AI to help you build out those correlations, understand them, crunch through big sets of information for you. But a good FP&A tool or piece of software to allow you to then build that model, run that model, get the outputs, and also get your people involved in the actual budgeting and modeling and forecasting through collaboration, multiple people putting input into it. An FP&A tool is essential for you to get that right.
And an FP&A tool is going to help you do it at scale, right? Excel in itself, there's nothing wrong with Excel in itself. It's probably if it's one of my top 5 apps of all time, WhatsApp, absolutely. Google, Excel would be up there.
For sure.
But at scale, when you've got to ensure integrity of your data, when you've got to collaborate with many departments all at the same time with short deadlines, this is why you would need that technology. And the integrity and the trust in that data is vital to this kind of work. You don't want to be coming back and, before that formula didn't link up properly, and that version was lost and we don't know how we got there.
Exactly.
You can't, in this day and age, I don't believe you
can't afford that.
You can't afford that if you want to do serious stuff. But Excel is still a genius piece of software.
For sure. And in fact, I mean, we say Excel is a genius piece of, first of all, if you're a small business and want to start doing this, use Excel, of course.
But use it
properly. You don't need to
use it well.
Use it properly, use it well. But you don't need to go buy something to do it. Excel's got the ability to do everything that we've mentioned. Scale is your critical factor there. As soon as you're going to multiple divisions within a business, multiple people, a database, single version of the truth, everything coming into the same place. When you get to your board meeting and two people pull up the same report, it must show the same numbers, and that's what you're driving towards. And if you've got a business that has multiple departments and lots of people involved, you need a system of some sort to do that.
Right. And thanks very much for this episode. Just taking us through how to implement some of these best practices. And thank you for sharing some of those examples. I think what we'll do next week, we'll stay with driver-based planning, but we're going to just look at, what are the real benefits? I think we've touched on them, and just looking at scalability. And I think then we've got a good grasp on driver-based planning and how important this topic really is.
Good. Sounds great.
Great. Thanks
very much.
Cheers.
Cheers, Raj.